What exactly is megalomania? If I were a psychologist, I would answer this question by stating, megalomania is a mental illness characterized by fixed, false beliefs of greatness, power, and wealth. Mental illnesses are medical conditions that upset a person's thinking, feeling, disposition, and ability to relate to others. Moreover, they result in a reduced capacity for coping with the ordinary demands of life. I once worked with someone who suffered from an unnaturally strong wish for power and control. This individual believed that they were much more important and powerful than they really were. I am currently reading William L. Shirer's masterpiece titled The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Hitler the Bastard, You Have to Know Your Enemy. This book has been on my reading list for at least 3 years. Certain books I've read are harder to commit to than others. Sir Martin Gilbert's tour de force, titled The Holocaust, A History of the Jews of Europe during the Second World War, took me several visits to the field library in Peekskill before I finally borrowed it. I picked it up, I put it down. I picked it up, I put it down, and so on and so on. My hesitation was that I knew I would never be the same after I read it. Let it be known here that my suspicions were correct. While reading the book, I slept, when I could sleep, curled up in a fetal position with my hands between my legs. This provided a false feeling of safeness. But I think the fact that I will never truly feel safe again is a good thing. One can't walk around comfortable in this world because there are too many manifestations of the devil himself. The devil brings me back to Hitler. Since I began studying the history of the Second World War, majoring in the Holocaust and the opening of the nuclear age, I've had what I will describe as a childishly simple theory as to what caused Hitler to ultimately fall. I've always believed that it was his megalomania, coupled with his blind hatred for the Jewish people, that brought him down. I also believe that the tipping point for Hitler's fall was Kristallnacht, also referred to as the Night of Broken Glass. On the night of November 9th, 1938, violence against Jews broke out all over Germany, Austria, and other Nazi-controlled areas. It appeared to be unplanned, set off by Germans' anger over the assassination of a German official in Paris at the hands of a Jewish teenager. In fact, German propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels and other Nazis meticulously organized the pogroms. In 2 days, Jewish shops and department stores had their windows smashed and contents destroyed. Synagogues were systematically burned, and sacred Torah scrolls were treated with violent disrespect. The world was shaken and disgusted by such brutality in a nation which possessed a centuries-old Christian way of life and a culture concerned with the study of language, literature, philosophy, and art. Hitler just wasn't thinking about the consequences of his actions. On Monday, January 19th, 2015, I learned from Mr. Shirer that I wasn't the ingenue on the battlefield of history that I thought I was. I stopped in time after I read the following paragraph in The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. In retrospect, it is easy to see that the horrors inflicted upon the Jews of Germany on November 9th and the harsh and brutal measures taken against them immediately afterward were portents of a fatal weakening which in the end would bring the dictator, his regime, and his nation down in utter ruin. The evidences of Hitler's megalomania we have seen permeating hundreds of pages of this narrative, but until now he had usually been able to hold it in check at critical stages in his rise and in that of his country. At such moments, his genius for acting not only boldly, but usually only after a careful calculation of the consequences, had won him one crashing success after another. But now, as November 9th and its aftermath clearly showed, Hitler was losing self-control. His megalomania was getting the upper hand. The stenographic record of the Göring meeting on November 12th reveals that it was Hitler who, in the final analysis, was responsible for the Holocaust of that November evening. It was he who gave the necessary approval to launch it. He who pressed Göring to go ahead with the elimination of the Jews from German life. From now on, the absolute master of the Third Reich would show little of that restraint which had saved him so often before. And though his genius and that of his country would lead to further startling conquests, the poisonous seeds of eventual self-destruction for the dictator and his land had now been sown. My story here isn't perfect. My story is only human. It is an open view to a mind that is really a weapon because it dares to think for itself without the fear of being measured by what it doesn't know. I like being a beginner. I think if I were the person who puts the 8 characteristic white squiggles across the top of a Hostess CupCake, well, then I'd like being a finisher.